Good, beautiful morning, everybody, and welcome to the Monday edition of Shortcuts for Your Soul. I'm fortunate today to have with me the energy of my guardian angel, John, who's been with me for about 45 years. And it's really important you understand how you're being kept to be angry and fearful. And there's a deliberate effort to keep you in an emotional state, because when emotion dominates, reason is suspended when emotion dominates, generally speaking. In order to understand how you are being kept angry and fearful, and we know that this is only a segment of the population, but it's a significant enough segment now that there have been cities burned to the ground and murder and violence of all kinds, primarily because you have been conditioned, sustained, and maintained to be kept in a state of fear, anger, and even violence. Let me explain to you the function of your body, which is an organism that lives based on a system of what you call pleasure and pain. The physical body, your body, the one that you are hearing these words through right now, is incapable of distinguishing between fantasy and reality. Your body does not have that capability to discern between what is real or imagined. With this knowledge in hand, there have been individuals and groups of individuals in the last 120 years that have understood this principle, that your body cannot distinguish between fantasy and reality, and so have presented to you information in forms that would cause some of you to think and feel a certain way, and others of you to think and feel another way. In your mind, a similar process exists where the function of discernment in your mind requires that there be an intervention between yourself and the thoughts in your mind. But generally speaking, your body cannot tell the distinction between what's in your mind and what's in the physical world. Only you, the sentient being that's hearing these words right now, has the capacity to determine what is true and what is false. A point to consider to verify what I'm saying is true is if you observe a movie you've been watching and you're excited by this movie, or you're frightened by this movie, or you're upset by what the characters are doing in this movie. It is just a movie, you know that, but you find yourself feeling anxious and nervous and afraid because of what you're observing on that screen. It is because your body and your mind cannot tell the difference between something that is pretend and something that is physically real. Your mind and body do not have that capacity. Now, when did you begin to get conditioned into violence and aggression and uncontrolled emotional states? It began almost 120 years ago when you began to be bombarded with information in larger and larger scales, where ideas of violence and pain and suffering could be put directly into your mind through such systems as film and what you now call television, whereas information could be presented to your mind where your function of discernment is suspended. So you found yourself watching presentations that were violent and aggression. Your cartoons would be a good example of that. Watching cartoons, much violence and aggression in a lot of cartoons. In the last 45 years, however, there has been this thing called games, what you call imaginary games that you can go and you can watch, and you can watch a screen and you can play and you can go out and you can kill and you can murder and you can maim and you can destroy in these games. Now, as has already been said, your mind and body cannot distinguish between fantasy and reality. That requires that you be able to make that discernment between what is real and what is false. Your mind and body cannot make that distinction in and of themselves. It requires the intervention of yourself. You, beautiful soul, must make the determination on behalf of your mind and body about what is true and what is false. However, if you have been indulging in such things where you are rampantly murdering and killing individuals in these games, and your mind and body cannot tell the difference between fantasy and reality, then you are, in fact, by participating in such things, conditioning your mind and body to violence. And those that created those games have a benefit at people being against each other, not standing with each other. And so whether you are aware or not, for the last 120 years, you have been conditioned by external influences to think, to feel, to believe, and to act according to the information being provided to you. We've heard this story many times that there are those that these are just games we play. But no, your mind and body does not make that distinction. How many of you found yourself prone to unexpected outbursts or uncontrolled emotional states? Much of what's been put into your mind through systems of communication that have been evolving quite rapidly now over the last 120 years have been used as devices to manipulate and instill certain qualities of thought, emotion, and behavior into your mind and into the function of your body. This is also true with what you call your conventional educational system, where the function of simply accepting what you're being told without question has become the new accepted norm. And this has resulted in the suspension of intelligence and reason in the process of education. Most of your education depends exclusively on you simply sitting, listening, accepting, and regurgitating what you've been told to remember. And that if you do remember it correctly, then you'll be given a gold star, or you'll be given a special mark or a special accolade of some kind because you were able to remember what you were told to remember. Not knowing that what you remember, what you told, what you accept, what you believe becomes the basis for the function of behavior and action. Much of the violence you see occurring around the world was placed in your mind often before you even realize it was put there. Many of you sit before screens interacting with characters in an imaginary world, not aware that even in the realm of that imaginary world, you are conditioning your mind, your body, your thoughts to a particular function of behavior that can be easily stimulated or triggered into action. In other words, if certain things occur around you, then functions of behavior can be stimulated within you. I'm simply coming to give you the idea and the information that you must evaluate whether or not you have been manipulated to judge other people a certain way, to think about others a certain way, to believe that others are a certain way, to operate by conditioning and not by an act of your own free will. Many of you do not understand that this event that you called the George Floyd event was an example of those in power that are pulling the strings of the puppet, so to speak, that those in positions of power could stimulate a single event and cause a function of behavior throughout your societies. And this function of manipulation is becoming more and more effective and more controllable, to the point where they can essentially make some people be violent when they want them to, and others be passive when they want to. But this is bringing about what we call the Great Awakening, where the unconscious conditions that cause you to suffer needlessly, where your mind has been filled with anxiety and doubt and fear from such mechanisms of so-called entertainment and fun, that you do not realize how you've been taught to think, to feel, to believe, to say, to do what you think, feel, say, and do. Many of you do not even question, because you were taught not to question. You're taught not to evaluate. Many years ago, when this one was at a point where he believed that his life was not worthless, he'd reached that point, and In a moment of grief, he called forth assistance, and I came forth. He had been taught and trained by his environment that he was worthless. Not having been taught how to think or evaluate his own thought process, not having been taught how to question and evaluate what other people were telling him, simply being told, you must do as I say as I do not, being conditioned to function and behave in certain ways, led to this individual coming to that place in time and space where they wished to end their lives. But understand that it was not an act of their own free will. There is no individual in all good conscience that would choose to end life if they understood the value of their own being. But if you've been conditioned to think and feel and believe that you are somehow different than what you actually are, then there will be confusion and uncertainty. And there's great forces at work in your human kingdom to keep many of you in positions of consciousness of fear, anger, guilt, rage, shame, helplessness. These are the general conditions being perpetuated into your minds through so-called entertainment, through what you call your so-called news, through your so-called educational systems, where you do not have the opportunity to develop your awareness sufficiently enough to be able to question ideas and beliefs that are being given to you, especially when you're told you must simply listen, remember, repeat, and replay. There's no function of reason in being told and simply following what you're told to follow without question. So there's a great many of you have been taught to hate. There's a great many of you have been taught to be angry. And a great many of you have been taught to be poor. And a great many of you have been taught to be what you've been taught to be. Always, your capacity to distinguish between fantasy and reality is the only way that you can begin to alter or change the conditioning. What you would call your social conditioning requires that you, as an awareness, begin to evaluate and intervene in the process of thought in your own mind, so that you no longer remain subjective to this thought or that thought without questioning it. Many of you simply are getting stimulated by your environment and simply just react to things without reason, as we've seen in recent days, how individuals simply react emotionally without any actual evidence for the reaction or the emotion. Many of you do not know that you've been trained to be afraid, trained to be angry, trained to respond with violence and aggression. That is something you have learned. You've been taught this. And those that understand the function of manipulation truly understand that the information they have fed you through systems of so-called education and entertainment were designed very specifically to establish certain faculties and factions of knowledge and behavior that could be pitted or played one against the other, as you have observed in recent years. Even the function of what you call systems of war work on that principle, where certain individuals have been conditioned to think, to feel, to believe, and therefore behave in very specific and predictable ways. The event that you call the George Floyd event was one such remarkable example of how the function of long-term conditioning could easily be set in motion by a single event. That a single emotional trigger could stimulate a function of behavior in large numbers of people that willfully or unconsciously suspended their capacity to reason. You need merely look at some of your exciting video games and your entertainment systems, where the propagation of violence and confusion, anger, rage, even murder are acceptable. And because your mind and your body cannot distinguish between fantasy and reality, and that which is fantastical has bled over into your material world, into what you call the real world, the physical world. You see, what happened in the physical world started in your mind. And where did what is in your mind come from? So you need to evaluate yourself. How have you been conditioned to think, to feel, and to behave? Those that have been conditioned to be angry and violent and aggressive are oftentimes unaware that they've been conditioned to be so. But you exist, we see you, we watch you. Many of you get very frustrated and upset because you do not understand that you've been manipulated into an emotional function of being that is often controlled and manipulated by external circumstances and events that are often generated to cause you to behave and act in certain ways. So-called looting. Look at some of your wonderful video games where you can damage and destroy and harm, and you wonder why the behaviors and functions of yourselves, and even why you would say or do the things that you would say and do. Until you begin to make that discernment between yourself, your mind, and your body, then you'll remain susceptible to being influenced by systems of information that are all around you. A simple television program, a news story, an event put on paper that's presented to you. There are many different ways that you can be triggered into violence and aggression without even knowing that that's happening. All the years you've watched fearful and scary movies have predisposed you to have that place of fear inside you, so that a single trigger can cause you to be in a very different state. Not because there's anything wrong with you, but because you've been trained to be dependent on the outside world to be that which provides you with what you're going to feel and think. And as long as the outside world is providing you with what you feel and think, then you have no will of your own. And without your own will, you will always feel powerless. You will always feel afraid. You'll always feel uncertain. You'll always feel angry, as these are functions of powerlessness. When you feel you have no power, there are certain emotional vulnerabilities that arise. But once you begin to awaken and begin the process of evaluating what is in your mind, and you begin to evaluate what are the things around you that cause you to feel a certain way, and why is that? Because things do not have to cause you to feel a certain way because they happen around you. But that is happening on a very broad spectrum right now. Many are being manipulated into violence and judgment, aggression, pitting you against your brothers and sisters in this world. So there is a clear and definitive movement to keep you angry, afraid, and judgmental towards yourself and towards others. Additionally, your systems of health are anything but systems of health. Rather, they focus more on the perpetuation of mental and emotional suffering, and then compound those with treatments that are no longer effective for the vast majority of people. But I wanted to keep it to a very simple consideration today, that you must begin the process of discerning yourself from your thoughts and your body, so that you can begin to rebuild your mind and body, not according to the way the world has done it for you, but in a way that is pleasing to you. Most of what you think and feel and believe is not of your own choosing. That is not always the case. There are many individuals in this world that freely think and evaluate and come to conclusions and understanding based upon an empirical reality. But many of you do not. Many of you are simply reactive and responsive to the stimulations of the outside world, controlled and directed by them. And as I have said earlier, your system of education globally loans itself to this model of controlling and being controlled. Those that go to learn become controlled by those that are teaching the systems of what are going to be taught. So many of you are, in fact, being conditioned to behave, think, and believe what you think, feel, and believe, until you begin the process of evaluating and questioning the reasoning behind thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. And the vast majority of people don't make that distinction between themselves, their thoughts, and their body's reaction. Your body and your mind cannot tell the difference between fantasy and reality. If you watch a television show that is disturbing and upsetting, you will feel disturbed and upset, unless you yourself, of your own free will, say, I'm just observing this. This is a television program. It will have no effect on me. And you can use your function of reason to sort out not being caught up in the emotional well, let me say the diabolical emotional influences that are being perpetuated on so many of you, the diabolical emotional influences that are being perpetuated on many of you through your systems of entertainment, particularly in the realm of what you would call violent and aggressive gaming and movies and the like, such as that. You have a very short window as a species to change your energy. You're bearing witness to signs in the skies. Understand that your emotional energy collectively orchestrates and manifests experience. Your emotional energy organizes your experiences individually and collectively. So, what is going on within you as a collective will go on all around you. If you are predominantly bent towards anger and fear and judgment, then you will have experiences in your experience that reflect that. If you hold deeply in your heart love and compassion, kindness and peace, then that will become your dominant experience. But the majority of you are not conscious that you can choose or not choose a certain emotion or state to be in. Therefore, you're easily manipulated by the environment. And you must understand that you were not designed to be manipulated by the environment. You're designed to be a creator of the environment. There is a process underway of what we call the Great Awakening. It's a process where collectively your humanity is going in a certain direction. You're beginning to awaken to possibilities of creation, that you are not merely a body, you are not merely a mind, you are a divine soul, a creating consciousness, an entity made in the image and likeness of a very powerful and intelligent consciousness. Name it what you will, but that consciousness lives within and around you and gives you everything that you experience. You've heard about many disasters in your history of humanity, dating back many tens of thousands of years, that these events, these catastrophic events, were not something that just happened for the sake of happening. Every event in this dimensional realm of the material world is a display of the act of creation. And civilizations have risen and fallen on the energy of creation. The dominant energy of any society or social structure ultimately produces the outcome of its experience. In other words, your collective love and your collective fear create different experiences for your planetary system. Different emotional states produce different experiences. And you're doing this individually and collectively. So you're watching these instruments coming into your solar system, these what you call interstellar bodies, but these are just elements in the material realm that are reflecting something that's going on inside you. If you look over your last 50 or 60 years, your so-called disaster movies of things like deep impacts and meteors hitting your planet, and what do you see in the sky? And many of you have lived in deep fear of these things. You must understand that the function of fear and the function of love are both creative influences over time, space, and matter. And if you've been conditioned to be in fear, to be in anger, then the outcome of that experience will be one that reflects that in the physical dimension. War, for example, is the epitome of very dark and negative emotional states being played out in this physical dimension. So when you see the things and events going on in the interstellar world, it is no coincidence that your emotional collective unconsciousness is precipitating experiences. Your collective emotional consciousness, or we could say your collective emotional unconsciousness, is producing all that you are experiencing, irrespective of where you, who is hearing these words, are around the world today. Your experience is a product of what is within you. And this is true individually and collectively. While one is more immediate to your own experience, the other is a contribution to the overall experience that humanity will have. Civilizations have risen and collapsed on the emotional collective consciousness of the societies that were involved in that process, the different cultures, the different people, the different belief systems. Those which are more based in love and compassion tend to thrive and survive. Those based in fear and powerlessness, control, and authority tend to collapse over fairly short periods of time. If you look at the spectrum of eternity, a few hundred years of an empire rising and falling, the amount of fear and anger generated by the function of conquest and power and controlling and authority make it very difficult for society to live beyond a few hundred years. Such manifestations as Atlantis and Lemuria and Mur, even Eden, were examples of civilizations that lasted thousands and thousands of years cohesively before corruption trickled its way into the hearts and minds of those in those societies, and those societies eventually fell under the foot and heel of fear, which is what tends to happen with the emotional vibrational energy of fear. Causes very specific things to happen in your life and in the collectiveness of your species. So understand, the further you are from the function of what we define as love, that which is supporting and sustaining goodness and righteousness, reason, compassion, kindness, playfulness, curiosity, creativity, versus the vibrational energy of fear, which includes violence and aggression, doubt, uncertainty, suffering, disease, war. Whichever one you choose collectively, this is the one that you will experience in real time. For you are creating beings. That which comes into matter had a preceding place of creation. In other words, the idea became manifest. So your dominant emotional state as a species, your collective unconscious emotional state, is what you will see and are seeing playing out in your world and indeed in the cosmos around you. You cannot separate the act of creation from yourself. So as you stay more aligned to your anger and your fear and your judgment, then you will observe in time and space such things will be reflected by that aggression, wars, rumors of wars, violence, things that are not good. And in the realm of love, the other would be true, that wonderful and beautiful things would unfold and occur for you. And while you are seeing kind of both occurring right now, you cannot serve fear and love. You must serve love or fear. You cannot serve two masters. So your time is interesting to observe. Look around you, because whatever you see around you is that which is within you. You have the choice to begin to discern between what your mind is thinking and what your body is believing. It must be a consciously chosen act. Reason, freedom must be consciously chosen. They will not happen on their own. Your species is heading towards experiences that, from the perspective of a physical being, will not be so pleasant. But there's also the possibility that you could head towards an experience that could take you into the dawn of a new and golden age based in the rock of love, truth, wisdom, knowledge, and peace. Choice is yours. Yes. So that is the foundation. What he's saying is the foundation of what most people have been conditioned to believe and live in fear. Most people are being conditioned and trained to live in violence. Yes, a good percentage of people, enough that we can see wars and violence and aggression, which is conditioned into people. That you weren't born violent or aggressive. All right, thank you, John. Appreciate that. Good morning, Jasmine. I brought my mom to Mexico City. We are on our way to the pyramids. Excited for the activations. Yeah, Teotihuacan is a beautiful, I may be mispronouncing it, Kimberly, but yeah, the pyramids near Mexico City are pretty remarkable. So it's fun climb up the Pyramid of the Sun. Hi. So that was the message today. And keep in mind that your body and your mind cannot distinguish between fantasy and reality. So even if you're watching a movie that's scary or frightful, your body and mind interpret that as real, unless you say, oh, it's just a movie, right? But your body and mind in and of themselves can't distinguish between fantasy and reality. It's so important you understand that. Your mind and your body cannot make the distinction between fantasy and reality. They don't have that capacity. That's why when you are watching a movie that's scary, you find yourself, oh my gosh, your body's actually in the emotional energy of fear. Or if the character you're watching they had that wonderful conclusion where they meet and they're so happy and they're falling in love and you feel joy. Watch what you allow to influence your mind and body. Be mindful of it. Because again, there are forces at work, demonic forces and angelic forces at work on this planet today. There are demonic and angelic forces trying to influence your mind. There are demonic and angelic forces trying to influence your behavior all the time. And only you can make the discernment between that which is good and that which is not so good, that which is evil, that which is good. Only you can make that discernment. Your mind and body cannot do that themselves. A lot of people just defer that. A lot of people just allow other people to somebody's saying, I'm not able to watch anything that is scary or fearful anymore. Wonderful. Yeah, it's nice to not be caught up in fear. That's the message for today, everybody. I'm so grateful that we had a chance to have some time together. These next few months shall prove to be very interesting on planet Earth. For we're at a pivotal point where collectively now we're at that fulcrum point between love and fear. The balance has been achieved. Now we get to decide, will we choose love or will we choose fear collectively? Because each will bear its own fruit. The functions of fear as a behavior is very different than the functions of love as a behavior. Emotions organize all of your behavior, right? Remember, if you've enjoyed the content you've heard today, would you like to subscribe, to share this with other people? Also, I want to encourage you, if you want to participate in some of the other things we do, our Patreon events, you go to my Patreon page, patreon.com/William Michael Forbes, and sign up and become one of our patrons. We have 2 live events every month, one on the 7th and one on the 21st of every month. And we do channelings, we do meditations, we elevate the energy of the planet. That's the goal of this channel, is to shift humanity collectively from fear back to love. That's the goal of this channel. If you want to know more about how to connect to your guides, how to connect to your angels, how to connect to ascended masters, because you are not alone in this dimension. You are not alone in this dimension. You have angels, you have guides, you even have loved ones who will guide you and assist you if you're open and receptive to that process. So I invite you to go to my website, williammichaelforbes.com, sign up for our next upcoming masterclass, 101 Awakening, which starts the 10th of October. I'll look forward to seeing you guys there. Go sign up today. Don't waste any time. Learn the simple, easy to follow techniques for how to connect to your guides, your angels, loved ones, ascended masters, and do that. Yeah. Hi, Imdad. Hi, this is Serpil. What is the message today for me, please? I really need it. Love, love, thanks. You need to bring your mind to stillness. In the stillness of your mind, that is where you can request assistance. In the emotion of fear and uncertainty, the function of creation is very different. But in the energy of stillness, the function of creation has far less resistance to it. It'd be very beneficial for you to sit in stillness today. And in the stillness, you may make your request for joy, for prosperity, for happiness, for wealth, for peace. But you must bring yourself to stillness, rest in the stillness, and then you'll begin to know the peace that already lives within you. Now begin that process today. Live in the stillness. Yeah. Thank you for following. Appreciate that. Huh. Sorry, I'm just checking comments here. Hi there. Thank you for the badge. Thank you for the hearts. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Yes, there we are. So that's the message. I hope you take it to heart, because understand, if you do not recognize that your mind and body can be manipulated by the world, by television, by radio, by entertainment, by education, that you can be taken over. You can be trained into being just a robotic being, just reactionary to anything that happens around you, which a lot of people are. A lot of people are conditioned to be just reactionary, no reason at all. And the zombies are here, folks. The zombies are all here. Anyway, I want to wish you all much, much love. Have yourselves a wonderful and a joyful day, and I'll see you guys on the Wednesday edition of Shortcut to Your Soul. Take care now. Bye-bye.